Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Stu Clark. Today we're going to be taking a look at backyard setup. We're going to be talking about setup photography utilizing fill flash. Recently, Neewer just reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in checking out their new Z2 Pro flash for Nikon. And definitely jumped on it. I've been using the Nikon SB800 now for these. I've got a couple of these that are better part of 20 years old. So yeah, why not? Let's try out one of these new flashes. And for starters, shocked at the size difference. It is a much larger flash. I use flash a fair bit. It works super well in a setup situation where you're dealing with very specific settings where you've got a background that's brighter than the perch setup. And this time of year is a classic example that where we're dealing with quite yellow grass. We're kind of late September right now. Even though it's a quite bright overcast day, we're still going to get some shadow on the perches. So you can see how the perch is quite a bit lighter than the background there. So this is what we're going to be trying to do. And using the fill flash is a way to give a very subtle flash to your subject and still get that really nice lighting of the background. So as a wildlife photographer, you know, it's very different than an event photographer in terms of the need of the flash. We're going to be backed off a ton of the power. We're not going to be hitting this at 1:1 at all. This is about a very, very subtle, just pop to fill in the shadows, just to make it so that your subject blends perfectly with the background. And it's one of those, it's really an art form trying to get it so that your subject makes so that you're not, it doesn't look like you're using a flash. That's kind of the real prime objective in wildlife photography. Now, flash photography, there is obviously a lot of controversy. You know, you don't want to go out with a flash like this at dark and go and start cranking 1:1, blasting owls that are just getting ready to hunt. Definitely that's not considered cool. But fill flash, we're just basically giving a little bit of a flash. We're just giving a very subtle flash to it. So even if you're going to go out and get owls late afternoon, it's no different than the sun coming through the trees a little bit. And you're just kind of giving that, like I say, that little bit of pop. It'll give it an amazing amount of color. You'll really notice the color on the bird. And then it will also give quite a bit of extra contrast and micro detail, and it will really sharpen the image up for you. So like I say, it's that real fine line with like a setting like this. You want to make sure you have to have a bright background. If I shot with the cedars as my background, what ends up happening is the cedars will be darker than the subject. And in those situations, flash just doesn't cut it. The flash will then, you're going to get too bright on the bird, too dark on the background, and it's not going to look natural. And that's not the type of use for fill flash. It's really about when you're given situations where you've got a brighter background than what your subject is. And that's what we're going to take a look at today. So the Neewer flash, this is the Z2 Pro. Trying to find me. So the Z2 Pro is I got to say, it's a budget-friendly flash, we'll say. These are for Canadian, these are about $229 right now. I did see them on sale when they actually got this to me. They were on sale for about $160 Canadian. When they first reached out, it's like, yeah, sure, give it a go. I got to say, the first impression, absolutely blown away with the quality, feel of this flash. Like I say, it's a lot larger than I expected, but that's okay. One really nice feature is it's got a lithium ion battery, but it's removable. And this is a feature that I think every lithium ion product should have. The fact that you can swap this battery out, if the battery dies, your flash isn't done. That is huge. That is such a great thing. And all products, as far as I'm concerned today, should have that. It is USB-C chargeable on the side there. This thing will take up to 600 full flash shots on one charge, which is amazing. You know, when I compare it to the old SB800 with the 4 AA's, it's a huge upgrade. And the one thing that for this sort of photography, because you're going to be shooting at fairly low power for the flash, the lithium ion batteries are incredible for cycling. It is amazing how quickly they can recycle. So in this sort of situation, I like to rapid fire with the flash, even if you might lose a little bit of power between shots, especially if you got it on high frame rate on your camera. I kind of like that because what'll happen is the first shot at full power and just knocking it down a little bit, sometimes you might find exposure that just works a little bit better in the series, depending on how you've got it set up. As the light changes, as the bit more cloud cover comes in, the sun comes out, having a little bit of variability in the flash output in each series isn't necessarily a bad thing. But having said that, this flash is amazing for just being able to cycle. Like I said, when you compare it to, if you're still using an older flash that's, double A powered, the new flashes are absolutely mind-boggling, really. It's got a modeling flash that will turn on, and you can actually turn it up in intensity from 1 to 10. That'd be great if you're dealing with a low light situation and the camera's struggling to find the subject a little bit. This is a really nice way of doing it. We'll probably provide enough light, in that 10 to 15, 20-foot range. Anything beyond that, it still might give a little bit, just enough light to help you focus. So this is a 76 watt. I think some of the more higher powered ones are up to 100 watts, but this is still a very good flash power wise. This is definitely, this would be kind of in that second tier of flashes from a full on output. It's the new round head versus a rectangular design. So it provides a really nice fill. And yeah, just like I say, the first impressions is build quality seems fantastic. It's a TTL, so it's a through the lens exposure metering for this flash. So it utilizes the whole camera system for metering. In this sort of situation, because of we're trying to light the subject and the background, basically we're exposing for the background and we want to use fill light for the subject. The SB800 had a TTL BL-FP, which was a balanced light option. This flash does not have that, unfortunately. The balanced light was great for this sort of situation because the flash would kind of balance the whole scene. So because of that, what I find in this sort of situation, and it's a lot easier just to take full control. We're gonna go full manual on the flash, we're gonna go manual on the camera. And this way because we've got a perch set up, we basically will set up the exposure based on the grass background, and then we're gonna manually dial in the flash for the perch and the subject so that we've got the background is perfect, and then we're just gonna use a little bit of flash just to give that little bit extra pop. So where you can see here where the shadow of the perch itself, so underneath the perch has got shadows, and this will really help with the flash. It'll help to kind of bring some of that shadow out and kind of fill that a little bit. And just by filling that flash, it just gives a really nice lit scene. Okay, so let's jump behind the camera and we'll kind of take a look, and there will be flashing in this video. I've got a warning below, just we'll kind of demonstrate, we'll kind of look at as the chickadees and nuthatches come into the perch, we can kind of play with how we light it and how we set it all up. So with this flash, you've got the mode button here, which allows you to switch between repeat mode, which if you want, this is a strobe mode. If you wanted to do some really artistic action shots, you use this mode here. You've got ITTL, which is through the lens metering, and then you've got manual mode. What I really like with this, it's got a great big dial here for adjusting your settings. Really nice feature. It makes it really nice and simple for adjusting exposure up and down for the flash. I really, really like that design. You got your modeling flash there, which you can turn on. So basically you push the button and you can see you've got 10 different settings there. So really nice feature. Then you can engage it on or off. And when you push it, you just basically turn it on and off. It's got 4 buttons here. So with the 4 buttons, you can change the zoom of the flash, so up to 105. We're gonna put it to 105 today, just based on using the 200 to 500. So 105 mil zoom is pretty typical for most flashes when it comes to trying to pick the lens you're using. What mode you're in will engage different buttons. With the repeat mode, these you can adjust the hertz and the duration and the number of shots you wanna take. We won't be covering that today. I have yet to dive into that style of flash photography. The SB800 had it, but never really played with it. I definitely gonna think I'll dive into that a bit with this flash, though. It looks quite interesting, and I'll probably do a future video on how to utilize that. I think with a wider angle, birds flying off a perch, it could be a really fun way to play. Okay, so for today, I'm gonna give a quick example of how the TTL is not ideal for this style of photography, and that's why we're going to switch it to manual mode. So first off, let's go into iTTL. So with TTL mode, we'll set it to 0 just to give you an even exposure. You're going to see one of the problems we run into. First off, we're going to actually so if you're shooting with the Nikon Z8, if you're going to be shooting with flash, it's something you need to definitely want to make sure is engaged. Even though we're going to be shooting with in manual mode, it's still a good idea to have this, and it might be really frustrating for you if you don't have it engaged. So we're going to go into E. We're going to go into the bracketing flash menu on the custom settings menu. We're going to go down to E4. And this is where, if you've got auto ISO engaged, you want to make sure you have that subject and background. What happens here is the camera will use the auto ISO to meter off of just the subject or the subject and background. Because the subject is darker than the background in this instance, what happens if you have subject only engaged, the auto ISO will meter off of the subject in the foreground, and you'll end up with a really dark background, which is not what we're going for here. So you want to make sure you've got subject and background enabled for this setting. Okay, so now we're going to jump back to the flash here. You can see we have the iTTL. We've got it set to 0 right now. And so what happens is, let's take a look at the perch here. We've got the perch focused on right now, and we're going to take a shot. So you can see how bright the perch is on that first shot, where it's totally overpowering the shot there. We turn this right down to minus 3.0. Let's try that shot again. It still looks flashed. You can still see how it's brighter than the background. So this is where we're going to go full manual on this and just take control of the shot and really kind of blend that in really well. Okay, so we're going to go and we're going to change this mode. We're going to change it to manual mode. We're going to be shooting about 1/500th a second. That's typically going to be fast enough to freeze the chickadee, so we will be using high-speed sync for this.
So for this style of photography, we're going to be shooting in high-speed sync with the flash. We're going to be shooting faster than the 1/60th of a second that most flashes want to sync with the camera for. So what you have to do with the Nikon Z8, we're going to go into the custom settings menu. We're going to go down to E, which is bracketing flash, and we're going to go to E1, and that is flash sync speed. And we're going to change this to 1/250th a second, or auto FP. And this is basically an auto high speed sync. So if you're shooting faster shutter speeds, the camera will sync up with the flash.
So what we're going to do now, we're going to set up again. So we're sitting at 1/500th at 5.6, and we're at 1/16th plus 0.9 for the flash at this point. So we're going to take a shot again. So you can see how now the whole shot is darker than we want. Okay. So what I'm noticing happening with auto ISO in the flash when you're dealing with subjects like this, for some reason, sometimes the auto ISO won't change. I haven't figured that one out yet. So what we're going to do, we're going to switch off auto ISO here. Even though we just set it for the auto ISO, just sometimes depending on what settings you're using, if you're using iTTL, you can use the auto ISO still. In manual mode, it seems to want to default lower for some reasons. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn the flash off, and we're going to just set the exposure based on the background first. Okay. With the flash off, auto ISO engages again. So when we look at this shot here, really nicely exposed, where you can see the top of the perch, which is lit in the same light as the background, looks pretty good. You've got options where you can start to play with this a little bit. So if we turn auto ISO off now, we turn auto ISO up to 4,000, 3,200 ISO. Let's just see what we're looking at here. So this one now allows us, because we're now in manual mode, it allows us to fully just go through and decide on how exposed we want that background. So we know that the camera picks it at 4000 ISO is what the camera's saying is the background exposed properly. You might want to pull that back a little bit more. You might want to push it a little more depending on what's going on. So let's have a look at say, let's go to 5000 ISO and see what the color, see how it looks. So you see at 5000 ISO, it gives it almost, it's a little bit brighter shot all around. And it might be, I might actually prefer that where it takes off some of the dullness of it. It's funny, it's quite a bright yellow background. So there will be definitely some adjustment in Photoshop after the fact. Okay, I like that. So we're gonna turn the flash on now. So this is, so you can see how the initial shot, it's got a little bit too much still. So let's turn that down a little bit more. Let's go, so let's go 1/16. I think it's still a little bit hot, little bit hot. So let's go down to 1/32. Yeah, I really like that. So now you can see how at 1/32, the perch and the background are lit really nicely. They're really evenly there. Okay, so now we've got the background. I like the exposure of the perch and background through the camera and also with the flash. So let's wait for some subjects to pop in here and we'll take some shots. What's really nice with utilizing the 1/32 with this flash, it's almost minimum flash pop. So it's a very fast duration, but it's also really fast to recycle. Notice that chickadee's a tiny bit hot still, so I'm just going to knock the ISO down to 4000. I noticed it was on +3 when I first set it up in camera. So you've got both in camera exposure compensation as well as flash exposure compensation. So this is where manual, like I said, with the setup like this, it's play with it, tweak it, adjust it a little bit. Don't forget that you're also dealing with changing light as the, as the cloud cover gets a little bit darker, you will be adjusting a little bit as well. So what I like, so as you're out here, because you've done it all full manual, it's like I say, there's a bit of an artisticness depending on what sort of effect you're going for. Like I said, I'm trying to go for that perfect blend. So as the day progresses, as you've been out for a bit, you definitely want to keep checking it and checking your exposure. You're obviously trying to keep your ISO as low as possible and your shutter speed as kind of we're at that minimum needed for chickadees, things like that. I like to be ideally in the 1/400th range, but 1/250th will be fast enough in a lot of situations because you're in a setup situation where you might have a lot of opportunities. Sometimes I will mix it up. Sometimes I'll shoot really low 1/250th, just trying to get as high a quality shot as possible. But then I'll also bump it up to 1/2000th where I want to try and get some nice wing flares. And because you got the flash on, you can play with it a little bit where you can go for the action shot, you can go for the really nice portrait shot depending on what you're trying to achieve. So right now I'm at 1/640th of a second at ISO 2000. And that seems to be giving a really nice blend. So the birds are not being overly cooperative with the perch today. They keep landing on either side of it. So you'll notice here when you look at the images, as we're going through them, as the initial shot and as we're shooting at high frames per second, you'll notice the exposure won't quite keep up on every shot. But I really like that variability in the exposures because sometimes it might be a little bit hot, the initial one. I said, especially because we're shooting an all manual here, that as the changing light conditions, having a little bit of a drop isn't the end of the world. And something I kind of like that when I'm shooting. I like to shoot, like you can set these cameras up where they won't fire until the flash is fully recycled, and I personally don't like that. I want the camera to shoot. I always want it to shoot. I can pull the exposure up or down in post anyway. So ideally for this, I just want the camera to shoot. So they said in that rapid fire shooting, it really allows you to you'll get some options when you get to post-processing for shots you might like one like better or the other. One of the things I really like with this flash, it's got 10 stops of adjustment per flash intensity. So 1/16, you've got from 0.1 to 0.9 adjustability on it, which is just fantastic. It gives you an infinite amount of adjustability on the exposure. ITTL through the lens exposure is great for when you're lighting the entire, you're shooting a wedding reception, for example, and you're lighting your subject. ITTL works fantastic. Been really impressed actually shooting just around the house with this flash. It performs really well. It gives really nice exposures and works super well. Because this is such a different sort of setup where you're shooting with that very, very subtle fill flash, having that adjustability between on each setting is really nice. You can really dial it in and just give that little bit of fill, just to fill the shadows. Like I say, it just gives you that little bit extra pop in the contrast and really sharpens your images up. It's really nice. As you can see too, been shooting a lot. So this has got 600 full recycled 1-to-1 flashes per charge. So when I'm shooting at 1/16, potentially thousands of shots by comparison. So the internal lithium ion battery on this flash is fantastic. Like I said, back in the day, the old SB800 with using aftermarket rechargeable batteries is good. It definitely performs well. There's no comparison. This kind of opens up another world from a flash standpoint. You can just recycle so fast. It's just amazing. So you can see the subtleness there of how just that little bit extra flash showing on the underside of the branch just fills it in, but it doesn't look too flash. So that's something that you say, having those 10 stops, you can just pull it back a little bit. This setup, it's an overcast day, shoots quite well anyway. If it's a brighter day, in the springtime, where I've got the really deep green grasses, because they're going to be darker or in basically the same exposure as the subject, essentially, the flash, I find, starts to look artificial. The flash for me is very much the yellow background right now with the dried out grasses, and then come wintertime with the snow, flash is a necessity. You just can't get a good exposure on a bird with the snow background. It's just too difficult. So having having the flash, and then in the snow, you'll definitely be turning up the power of the flash quite a bit more, just because the snow is going to be really dominant for the exposure. Where right now, this background is about 1/640th. If it was green, it would be 1/300th because it's a bit darker. Like if you look right now, so you look now, and when I go up to the, so if I switch to auto ISO, you'll see how, let's turn the flash off real quick here. So you see when you turn the flash off, the auto ISO engages differently. So you see at 1/640th at 6400 ISO. And when I go to the perch down here, I'm at 1/640th at 1000 ISO. So that gives you an idea where we're dealing with the same light, essentially the same sort of intensity of light on the grass and on the green, but significant difference in the exposure based on just the green versus the yellow for how vibrant it is. So if a bird is on the green tree, it will most likely be brighter exposure than it is against the green. So what happens there, you actually need to hit negative. So you actually need to underexpose to make sure you're not blowing out the bird. So you look at this little nuthatch here. You can see how the whites, missed the shot a little bit there, but you can see how the whites are quite bright. So for shooting against that background there, because the bird's white against the dark green, you're going to actually be -0.3 or -0.7 to control that exposure. So you definitely don't want the flash going off in this sort of setting against where your subject is brighter than the background. But with that bright yellow grasses, and because you've got a little bit of undershadow where the bird is sitting on the perch, this is where that little bit of fill flash can really help to kind of brighten that subject against that yellow background. So in the next round here, we'll take some shots without the flash to give you an idea. But here, how much shadow is showing underneath the breast of the nuthatch. And this is what the fill flash is all about. It gives you that pop of color, that pop of orange that you don't get in this sort of situation where that was fairly evenly lit, but just a little bit shadowed and darkened. So the Neewer Z2 Pro flash. This is the Nikon version, available for Sony or Canon. I gotta say, it's definitely one of the better value flashes right now. I can't speak to the longevity of it. Obviously, you know, when I'm comparing it to a 20-year-old SB800, is it gonna last that long? No idea. But what I will say, my initial tests with it, performance-wise, especially in the fill flash capacity, which is where I'm going to be using it the most. I don't do portraits, I don't do weddings, so I can't really speak to it in that sort of use. Some of the videos I watched online looks like from an overheating standpoint, it's actually one of the top flashes for not having overheating warnings. Whether that's simply there is no warning or it's just exceptional for that. In my uses here, I had no problem, doesn't get hot at all. So far, been really impressed with it, really excited to do a bunch more shooting with it. But yeah, that's the Neewer Z2 Pro. I'll leave affiliate links down below if you want to check that out. I say fantastic value if you're looking for a new flash. And like you're like me, where obviously do flash photography, but it's not all the time. It's really nice. Just that recycle rate is just exceptional. Lithium ion battery compared to double A's, there's really no comparison. And so yeah, I hope you got some good info out of this, talking about how to utilize fill flash in a setup situation. And thanks to Neewer for sending the flash out to me. Till next time, we'll see you out there. Take care.